I want to start this video off with a story because I think it explains everything I want to say. My mom dated well into her later years, into her late 80s. In fact, she started dating a gentleman who was 100 years old. And they were so cute. They were even in the paper. He passed away at 105. So they dated for 5 years. So I know firsthand it is never too late to find love. That is, if you want to. And here's what I mean by that. 2 years after my divorce, I started dating a wonderful man. He was kind and funny and intelligent and thoughtful, and he cleaned his house way better than I clean mine. So, yes, we had a few issues like every other couple out there, but nothing was a deal breaker. But I realized something that really surprised me. I realized I didn't want to be in a relationship, not because of him, but because I understand what a healthy relationship requires: time, commitment, energy, compromise. And I realized I just did not want to do that anymore. That moment changed how I understood this stage of my life that I was going through. And I was a little shocked at first. Once I realized, you know what, this is okay, and I accepted it, then I realized the judgment needs to go, Lisa. This is just where you are in your life, and it's okay. And then when I started looking around, I discovered that a large number of people in this stage of our lives, midlife and beyond, are choosing to enter retirement solo. What surprised me when I started looking at the research is this: that a large percentage of both men and women after 50 are basically choosing to stay single, even years after divorce or loss. This one study I read showed that 77% of women and 62% of men stayed single even 10 years after their divorce. This told me something really important. It's not about gender. It's about the stage of life that we are in. And really, that's what this whole channel is all about. It's about going into this second act of mine on my own, solo. This video is not about dating. It's about how our priorities shift as we get older and why choosing a solo second act can be an intentional, peaceful choice. Hi, my name is Lisa. I am a Canadian mom, grandma, retired teacher, and counselor, and welcome to the channel. So today we're talking about why so many people are choosing to enter retirement solo, and why for many, it's not a loss at all. It is the deeply intentional choice. I think one of the first things that change with us as we get into this stage of our lives is that our priorities change. We spend our younger years fully immersed in growing our careers, our education, our families. It's all about building and accumulating. And then when we get to this stage of our lives, the priorities shift. Instead of building, we're now into protection mode, protecting what we've accumulated, protecting our families, and also protecting our peace. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You start creating boundaries you didn't have before. There were certain things we would put up with that we just don't put up with anymore. And whether that is from a partner, a family member, a coworker, I just find that my patience and my ability to tolerate drama and chaos has dipped dramatically. My peace is non-negotiable at this stage of my life. I need to protect my space. And if you are bringing all sorts of chaos into that space, it's no thank you. I think another reason people are choosing to remain solo is because of the freedom value. I talk about freedom on this channel all the time. For me, retirement is really all about that. I think that choosing to retire solo actually just exponentially ups the value of freedom, because we have been at the mercy of schedules and our jobs and decades of obligations. Now, that freedom, that autonomy feels sacred. I think once they get a feel for it, many women and lots of men too, they realize how much freedom they have living solo and how much they value it. For example, there's no having to coordinate schedules. I know this became a big issue with the boyfriend I was talking about, trying to coordinate schedules with him, his friends, all these concerts he wanted to go to, my family. And it became an energy drainer for me because I just didn't want to have to go through that. I wanted to focus on what I wanted to do and what my family was doing, and that was it. And I make no apologies for that. I feel like freedom later in life, it doesn't feel reckless anymore. It feels like it's been earned. And I earned this opportunity to say, you know what? I'm going to be selfish because I want to focus on what I want to do and what my family is doing, and I want them to be the focus. If I want to drop everything and go on a cruise to Mexico, I can do that. And I don't have to negotiate or explain or coordinate with anybody. I just do it. And that feels amazing. I think a huge reason for women choosing to stay solo in their retirement is because they're way more financially self sufficient than they have been in the past. When you're able to support yourself, that partnership becomes optional, not a necessity. And so when finances are stable, the relationships are not about survival, they're about value. Like, what value can you bring to my life? And being honest with you, over the years, I've lost a lot of money because of relationships going south. And I just don't want to be in that situation again. I don't want to merge my finances with anybody. I have no interest in looking after anybody financially anymore. I just want to take care of myself and my family, and that is that. I've worked really hard for this stability in my life, so I want to protect it. Another reason could be that at this stage, companionship no longer necessarily needs to mean romance. Our emotional needs and social needs, they can be met in many other ways. Our friendships, this 55 plus community that I'm in, my family, my pets. For many people, that companionship is already being met. Just as an aside, I mean, our pets, they're pretty big snuggle bunnies, but they don't bring the drama, unless you have a husky, maybe. Another example, friend and I, we went on a 15-day cruise and it was so relaxing, right? There was no drama, there was no expectation. It was just pure friendship and it was peaceful. So at this stage of our lives, many of us are recognizing that those deep friendships with platonic friends are actually more fulfilling than romantic type relationships. And a big reason is solitude is not the same as loneliness. I love the line, your presence has to feel better than my solitude. Because there are times when being in a relationship is actually more lonely than being on our own. And it's definitely less peaceful. And when we get to this stage, like I said, we want to protect what we have. And peace is one of the core values that we have at this stage. And for those of us who have been through toxic relationships, and we have spent a lot of time going through that healing process and getting to a place where we're good now, we do not want to risk that. Many people just do not want to start all over again. And it's not out of fear, it's not out of bitterness or resentment, it's just out of discernment. Their peace, their healing was hard won, and they do not want to even go there because overall, that sense of calm, that sense of peace feels way more valuable to them than the possibility of having a complex relationship again. For many people, solitude has become a sanctuary, not a problem that they have to solve. Many people genuinely enjoy their own company. And I'm finding as I get older, I enjoy being on my own more and more. In fact, I have to push myself, remind myself, get out there, go play cards, go visit a friend, because I actually really enjoy being on my own. But honestly, I think the biggest reason that I've read anyway, and I do feel like it fits in with me personally, is that we get to live the way that we want. I find it hilarious that the one thing that comes up again and again is I know where my remote is. And so I know it seems like such a little thing, but I couldn't help but notice that once I started being on my own, I always knew where my TV remote was. My kids were over the other day, and once they left, I'm cleaning up and I couldn't find my remote. And it irritated the heck out of me. So it just goes back to that solo life allows people to live as they truly are. And that means that if I want to sit and watch politics for 12 hours in a day, which I should not because it's very depressing, but if I did, that's up to me. And here's more examples that you might be able to relate to. You get the whole bed to yourself. You can eat cereal for supper if you want. In my case, it's cheese nachos. I eat way too many of those. I get to choose what I want to see on the TV, listen to whatever I want to on the radio. It's these little things, I know, but they add up because it just makes life so much easier. And after years and years of compromise and always having to negotiate, when you no longer have to do it anymore, there's that sense of freedom that I think a lot of people just don't want to give up. I think another big reason is that success is now being redefined. Even retirement is being redefined. We're retiring earlier and earlier. And so when we are in our 50s and looking at, I have the possibility of living another 30, 40 years, how do I want it to look? And I think this is one of the reasons why gray divorce has been on the rise, because they're looking at it saying, do I want 30 to 40 years of this? I think I'm going to do a whole other video on this topic because it's fascinating. But society is now changing the way they look at this stage of our lives, and they're not expecting anymore that we have to be in a marriage to have the makings of a really good life. We now look at success as having good health, stability, freedom, purpose, joy. And that's either with the partner or without, doesn't matter. It's not really about our relationship status as much. It's almost like a redesign of what this stage of our lives could look like. So I think it all comes down to this. As we get older, we stop living by default and we start living by design. We get to decide what this next 20, 30, maybe even 40 years are going to look like. And whether someone chooses a partner later in life or not, the real win is they're choosing intentionally. And if you do decide, because it's your choice, that you want to get out there and start dating again, you might be interested in this video all about how to avoid romance scams. If this resonated with you, I would really appreciate if you consider it giving a thumbs up and maybe even subscribing to the channel. And I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Do you feel like your priorities have changed with age? And if you're entering this next chapter solo, does it feel less like loss and more like clarity? I'd really like to hear your thoughts. Until next time, have a wonderful day.